Oh my god, I think I need to start this video by apologizing that I actually recommended keeping an eye on this game in June. To be fair, I mentioned that we need to be wary and wait for the reviews and maybe try it out then, but please don't. I played MindsEye for 5 hours. According to my save, I'm about 50% through this game. It's an absolute mess. Even though there is some part of the story that is vaguely interesting, the design of this game is horrible. The open city is useless, AI sucks, there's bugs and glitches everywhere, and I'm actually using the word everywhere on purpose, but I'll get back to that later. Is it the worst game of 2025? I don't know yet, but it's definitely a contender. Let me tell you all about it so that we can forget MindsEye and move on. Okay, a brief backstory. MindsEye comes from a studio called Build a Rocket Boy, but it wasn't announced as a standalone game. It was supposed to be a part of a, well, let's call it a platform or a gaming sandbox where players could access different experiences, and that was called Everywhere. MindsEye was supposed to be one of those experiences. Now, we don't hear a lot about Everywhere, but MindsEye has been the flagship title for the studio, officially presented as coming from Leslie Benzies, one of the lead creators of the Grand Theft Auto series. Now, if you hear that a GTA high-ranking dev is connected with a game, and he makes a game that has this bit of a GTA feeling, your expectations are quite high. You assume that, sure, maybe the level of detail won't be on par with what Rockstar does, because they might not have the funding to spend that much time on developing this game, but a lot of experience will be brought to the team to make, well, I don't know, a GTA Junior? Oh man, it's so not. In MindsEye, we play as Jacob Diaz, an ex-soldier implanted with a chip sent on a mission that goes wrong. Jacob loses his memory, and a few years later, he tries to start a new life as a security guard in a company called Silva. To be honest, the beginning of the game was pretty boring, but the further I got, the more interesting the narrative became. I can't say that it's on a super high level, but still, there is some intrigue here that might have had me hooked for a while, but the game does everything in its power not to convince me to keep playing. Diaz gets dropped in the city of Red Rock that gives me a big vibe of Saints Row from 2022, but that's not surprising since the game Santo Ileso was inspired by Las Vegas, and with Red Rock, the casinos keep being mentioned, there's a place that looks like Bellagio, so yeah, a similar vibe. The thing is, the game never actually lets you explore the city on your own. The design is extremely linear, and it reminds me of the first Mafia, which doesn't have to be bad. I actually loved the first Mafia game, as well as the remake of that game. However, the crucial part is having the narrative that's interesting, having well-written dialogues, having a pacing of these dialogues fit how long you have to drive somewhere. Oh, but not here. While the city of Red Rock tries to tempt you with how it looks, the game just doesn't give you any time to actually explore it. You go for a mission, shoot something, backtrack, drive back home, see a cutscene, then an NPC comes to pick you up. You drive somewhere, see a cutscene, drive somewhere again, shoot some guys, backtrack, drive again, see a cutscene. You get the drift. I mean, sure, theoretically you could say that in its basic premise this is exactly how most games like these work, even GTA. The difference is in its quality, in its pacing, as I mentioned. I just don't feel that Red Rock is in any way an interesting place to be. I know nothing about this city. I don't remember any place I visited because I'm just thrown around from one location to another to do some random stuff. And it's so much driving there. They tried to make it more interesting by giving you this timer with, hey, this is the average time to get there, try to beat it and arrive there faster. But I really couldn't care less. Driving itself feels a lot like Watch Dogs, it's very arcadey. I don't really like the physics of vehicles in this game. Also, if you drive a buggy or sometimes you get off-road with your regular vehicle, the way your vehicle behaves is really not fun. Also, throughout those 5 hours of gameplay, I think I only drove 4 different cars, even though the city is full of different vehicles. I have a huge issue with a minimap as well. It's there mostly to help you with navigating to your destination while you drive, but I feel like something is a bit off. When I was driving somewhere, I kept looking at the minimap to see that, oh, okay, I'm near an intersection where I need to go right, and suddenly I realized that I just missed my turn. I remember people complaining about a similar thing when Cyberpunk was released, and while there I didn't have that problem, here it is definitely an issue for me. So probably it's even worse than it was there. I mentioned backtracking previously, and here I feel it speaks to a really bad level design of a game. The way you usually do it today in games like these is that you enter a location, you clear enemies as you go, you progress through different levels in the building, and when you get to the end, let's say you get some kind of a cutscene, and then you need to get back down to your car. Usually you would have an easier, faster way to go down to get to your destination directly because there's no need to keep you there. Oh, but not here. The game usually, and not always, I admit, forces you to go back the way you came because they couldn't be bothered to make it more player-friendly. And there's usually nothing interesting to do there, just walking next to the bodies of enemies you downed previously. And speaking of enemies, let's talk combat. The game is a cover shooter and it actually often requires you to hide because enemies can sometimes get you pretty quick. However, it feels very uneven. The robots seem to be more accurate and they can obviously take more hits, while humans use a bigger variety of weapons, and they sometimes, but not very often, try to show some signs of AI existing in this game. The problem is that AI is usually dumb as hell, while robots feel a bit spongy with how many hits they can take, and that's because of the fact that guns are not really that fun to play with. I mean, sure, I like the way my handgun behaves and sounds, it feels punchy, I can get a lot of headshots with it, but SMG has too big of a recoil, assault rifle doesn't really have a lot of ammo, shotgun is fun but it requires you to get very close, and with the cover shooter mechanics it's not always possible, the sniper rifle is okay, I guess. At first I liked the sound design of weapons, but the longer I played it felt like something's a bit off. Still, I usually ran with my handgun even though it's the first weapon you get in this game. Oh, and there's one more thing that's pretty inconsistent, I'd say. Ragdolls of enemies getting hit by some weapons look like someone attached a stunt guy to a wire, then they recorded an animation with a really fast pull on that wire, and they just left it there for high caliber weapons. I mean, it does look funny, but if you see it all the time, well, it's just too much and it loses its impact. MindsEye generally feels like somebody wasn't really overseeing the whole project and there's a collection of random things there. For example, you have a mission when you do CPR as a QTE event. Once. You have a mission where you have to crack a safe. It's a different minigame that you only do once. And I'm pretty sure that if I played the game more, there would be a different minigame that doesn't really feel that necessary in there, but it's there just to have the player actually do something, because somebody had a thought and they really wanted to put it in there. And don't even get me started on stupid placement of checkpoints during the mission and unskippable cutscenes. But you know what? This is actually a good starting point to talk about the side content, because the checkpoints and unskippable cutscenes pissed me off there. Every now and then you will see a portal. If you enter that portal, you play a short side mission as a different character with a specific task. It tries to give you some kind of narrative background, but it's mostly there to showcase a feature that the game has, which is building your own missions for yourself and other players. So, for example, I had a mission where I had to place 4 robots in, let's say, a dozen available spaces in a kind of a tower defense mission. The problem is, I couldn't really control the robots or influence what's happening after the placement, and with that stupid AI of both my robots and my enemies, sometimes my friendlies were just shooting the wall. I kept losing that mission, and every time I hit replay, I had to listen to the whole starting cutscene again. I mean, I get not allowing the player to skip it the first time they see it, but when you play it again, come on. Also, this whole segment of portal missions is such a strong push to convince you that you should create your own experiences for other players. And I really don't want that. I don't need to get a medal based on my time to clear the level. I'm really not interested in speedrunning something that takes me out of the narrative of the main game. It feels super forced on me and I really couldn't be bothered. At some point I started to ignore the portals that were put in front of me during the main mission paths, and I didn't miss a thing. And finally, let's talk about the graphics and the performance of the game. To be fair, it started not bad for me. The game looks okay, it's built on Unreal Engine 5, so you kind of expect some kind of level of graphical fidelity. What I really didn't like was the blurriness that I had everywhere and the graining effect that you usually get with DLSS not working properly. And the reflections on surfaces looked really wonky. So while initially everything was going pretty smooth, after a while the game started frame dropping much more often. I played with unlocked frame rate, and at some point while driving through the city I tried to measure the FPS that you can actually see on the screen right now. It was nowhere near stable, but at this level of FPS it shouldn't bother you that much, especially with G-Sync on. The problem is, sometimes in the cutscenes it was dipping a lot, and from what I can see online, people generally complain about the really poor performance of the game. I played it on PC with a RTX 4090, so I guess the hardware was compensating for the poor performance of the game. All in all, the more I played, the more noticeable issues I had. So how bad actually is it? Well, let's just say that yesterday when the game launched, the peak number of players on Steam was about 3,300, and as of the moment of writing, the average rating on Steam is at 42%. It's still changing because yesterday, about 2 hours after release, it was in its 20s, while today in the morning I saw that it was near 50%, but it's going down again, so we definitely cannot call that a successful launch. Add to that the fact that there were no proper hands-on opportunities with the game ahead of launch, review keys were not sent to any media, as far as I know at least. I know that we requested access, but we were told that we won't get anything ahead of release. In the end, I used a Steam Press account to get access to the game. We were not given a key for it. Anyway, 3,300 people in peak for launch day. Well, if you compare it to other multi-platform games from the recent weeks, then it's really bad. Clair Obscur, 145,000. Doom the Dark Ages, 31,000. Atomfall even had over 6,000 people in peak. Dune Awakening, 142,000 people yesterday. By the way, this game is really great. Check it out if you like MMOs. And then obviously there's the whole recent drama about a bad workplace environment in the studio that Luke Stevens covered as well, if you're interested. Basically, I don't think the studio can consider the launch of MindsEye a success in any way. Where is the actual problem though? It's not like it's the first mid-game of this year, or well, maybe a bit less than mid-game. I think it all lies in the marketing and the vision given to the players. If you market the game as coming from the GTA creator, then, as I mentioned at the beginning, certain expectations come with this. If you try to position your approach to a game as visionary because of the platform you're building, and in the end you don't deliver on that vision, then people will get more upset. And I get that. The idea for MindsEye that was sold to me a few years back was interesting. The latest trailer presented for the game was doing a really good job at encouraging people to check it out. Over 100,000 people on Twitch were watching the streams from MindsEye yesterday, but if the sales data is so low, then it means that everyone just wanted to see how bad it is. I played half of it, but I really don't want to play it anymore because the story in the game is not enough to make me forget about all the other problems that this game has. I'm actually upset with this because I really hoped that the game will pull off a miracle in the end, but it didn't. So let's see if the developers can now work on fixing this game and maybe somehow convince the players that it's worth giving a shot. But I'm out. Thank you for watching. Take care.